Assalamu alaikum students. I'm Zartash and I'm going to teach you a topic from your course Morphology and Syntax. And the topic of today's discussion will be uh, minimalist program. In our previous lecture, I introduced government and binding theory, and in this lecture we will be discussing minimalist program. And let me say that minimalist program is um, advancement, revolutionary approach that even improves the previous theory that was government and binding theory. So let's have a look. That's our topic. As its name suggests, minimalism is basically an approach that that is a drive towards precision, um, towards explaining things in a way that in a way it simplifies them and it makes them simpler. Complex structures, they are made more simpler by the techniques and methods that lead towards simplification. So in this approach, basically Chomsky named it minimalist program rather than a theory or something. It's a kind of a whole new mindset, a whole new approach towards minimalism, minimalizing in simple ways, minimalizing things. So here is a brief introduction. So it developed inside generative grammar. Generative grammar is basically a theory that says that grammar has the capability of generating endless sentences, provided the structures, and it started with Chomsky's 1993 paper. Basically, we can say that minimalism was the approach in 1990s, and it basically provides a conceptual framework that guides the development of already available linguistic theory. Now, what basically this thing means is that we have linguistic theory in front of us in the form of previous approaches that we had. For instance, so first of all, as we discussed earlier as well, government and binding theory and universal grammar. So all these frameworks, they try to explain how language it operates, how structures they are strung together, how they assume meaning, how they represent themselves, how they interpret it, how they convey meaning in each and every aspect of linguistic theory. This approach basically tries to revolutionize that thought process, in fact leading away from such theories that even they, rather than simplifying the process of understanding, rather they made it more complex. So minimalist program entirely tries to reshape all those theories towards a more simple, towards a more better, towards a more revolutionary approach that is going to explain everything, that is going to make those structures simple, and of course they should be able to explain. They should be able to develop, help our understanding of them. So this term is typically associated to such trends that try to uh, minimalize things, or in other words, break down them into their fundamental features. So we can say that it tries to say that we should focus the fundamentals of language, the fundamentals of structures, rather than um, focusing on the complex methods and complex ways of defining a simple process. In other words, we can say that language is a very, very interesting and, in a way, simple process, and it should be approached in a simple way as well. Rather, it should be defined, and it should be elaborated that way. So that's what basically minimalist program aims at. And Chomsky termed it as minimalist program because it is kind of a system, a program, not just a theory, that basically tries to shift um, a linguist's attention towards um, uh, simplifying and defining language and its structures in a different way, in a amazingly interesting way. So let's see how this program tries to take us to a different angle to view what basically language is. One thing I would like to mention here is that certain things may seem difficult for you to understand, and the reason I'm using the word difficult is that you might be looking for certain answers, a proper understanding that we require whenever we study some topic. So that won't be a difficulty for you people. In fact, this entire program, let me call it a program, is actually going to raise certain questions, and we're going to find answers to them, but we may leave certain things uh, um, that future research is trying to answer. So you won't be finding specific and particular things here. Rather, we're going to deal with a very, very interesting philosophy, I must say, that has its roots in the theory, that has its roots in practice as well, and it is actually going to take theory and practice with it. So let's see what is next. The next is that how this approach is basically it is building on previous approaches, but it is trying to improve them and revolutionize them. In a sense, it wishes to see things from a different perspective. So it basically builds upon them, it rationalizes them, and the successes of the earlier manifestations of the principles and parameters theory, whose first manifestation was the government and binding framework. In our previous lecture, we discussed government and binding theory, and we see how it basically defines structures, and it basically it was of the view that phrase structures, they have their representational aspects and their constraints, and they are governors that govern those structures, and there are structures that bind together. They bind structures together. So um, it basically builds on those principles, but it tries to improve them and revolutionize them. And the main difference that you will find between government and binding theory and minimalist program is that it tries to explain way more than the government and binding theory. Government and binding theory and the other theories, they highlighted certain aspects of human languages, for instance, how they operate, how meanings they are conveyed. And this theory, this program, minimalist program, not only it tries to explore the potential of human languages, but it also tries to highlight those specific properties that underlie them. Um, it is a whole new package that is simplifying things. You people will be studying sparse syntax and argumentation, syntactic argumentation. In all those lectures, in fact, you people will be dealing with minimalist program. So minimalist program is not just it can be defined in a single definition or a lecture, or I simply provide you. It is the entire syntax. You can see modern syntax that is basically explaining structures in a much more simpler ways. Some examples we'll see in this lecture as well. And while you are studying your expert syntax lectures and syntactic argumentation lectures and the entire morpho-syntactic features, morphemes and their distribution and each and everything. This entire thing is basically minimalist program. It is trying to explore language. It is trying to explain things in much modern and simpler ways than before. In my previous lecture, I highlighted how previous approaches there had been uh, uh, the researchers and the linguists, they had been very much engaged towards historical aspects of languages and structural aspects and how they evolved and how they died and the like aspects. But then Chomsky paradigm, it basically shifted their attention towards much different phenomena, and then came the theory of generative grammar, in which it was seen how grammar, they have the capability of generating and transforming, and then the common and binding theory and principles and parameters and universal grammar, and now the last but not least one, the minimalist program, tries to build on all of them, but tries to further explore and simplify things rather than making them more complex. So it is a kind of whole new you may say, approach that is underlaying all the various approaches and theories and structures that you people often will be working on. So the underlying philosophy will be the minimalism. So let's see some further characteristics of this approach. So here is Chomsky's quotation, and in this he is trying to say how important it is to just not be satisfied with what we have. And what we have, by that I mean the approaches that we have right now that try to explore the phenomena that of what languages and how languages they operate and how languages they function. So Um, it is it is time that the attention should be shifted and new ways to approach the same things should be devised. So this uh, quotation is really very interesting and important. Um, it is basically highlighting the importance of betterment and change in a field. The field is changing rapidly under the impact of new empirical materials and theoretical ideas. By this, Chomsky means empirical materials. Empirical materials are those materials that are scientific, and scientific means uh, that applies to all the phenomena under the same circumstances. For instance, the methods and the procedures that apply to all the languages, regardless of their different, for instance, be that language Urdu or Punjabi or Pashto or Saraiki or French or Chinese. So empirical materials are those materials that will apply to all of the phenomena in the same way. And the theoretical ideas, they constantly change and improve. So what looks reasonable today is likely to take a different turn tomorrow. So it seems the things that are right now in front of us they seem to be very clear and okay. Soon it would come out that they are not sufficient or they should be improved or there should be betterment. And that process is reflected in the material that follows. And then afterwards, when the changes and the improvements are done in a field, new materials are developed. So those requirements and those processes, they reflect in those materials. Though the general framework remains, the modifications at each point are substantial. General framework may be same. For instance, still we are studying languages and we are studying from their syntactic structures, but modifications, they are substantial. Those structures, we will be approaching them differently. We will be viewing them differently. We will be approaching them differently, and our hypotheses and our conclusions will be different. So the most important part, concepts and principles regarded as fundamental in one chapter, are challenged and eliminated in those that follow. And that is really you may say a reality of research improvement. That's how things they improve. They shouldn't be assumed as just 100% perfect. Perfection is the end of universe. So it means that concepts and principles that may be true in 1980s or 70s, they won't last in 21st century. As you can see around you, phenomena, they are constantly changing. In living in 21st century, we are under, you can say, this new disease is a kind of a good example how this simple thing has challenged all the scientific achievements humanity has achieved so far. We're still, it seems as if still we need to improve a lot more than that. So that's what Chomsky actually tried to say, that although we have all the important concepts and principles and we have laid a foundation with our uh, theories that uh, approach language in a very good way, but they are not perfect. It will be time when they won't be all, rather improvements would be required. So this is what minimalist program is, to revolutionize the previous thoughts, theories, and concepts and principles. So next is a very, very important thing, interesting thing, in fact. We're going to discuss how simple and amazing system we have to communicate or to translate our ideas into words, how our minds they translate our thoughts into physical things. Physical things means phonetic form, phonological form. So this diagram is basically going to highlight language is a perfect system, and it has optimal design, and it is designed to interface perfectly with other components. So basically, we have lexicon, a syntax, and we have syntactic structures, and those syntactic structures, they have two aspects, and they have a semantic component and they have a phonological form. So a phonological form is represented in the form of speech systems, and semantic components, they are represented in the form of thought systems. So we have a perfect and optimal design. Interface, here you can see the this whole design is in fact uh, completely and perfectly providing an opportunity to communicate, and it is very easy to understand. And the element of interface here, the connection between them, you can see that even the connection between them is very optimal and clear. Semantic component and phonological component, they constitute what basic structure is in front of them. The both of them are important to this structure of a sentence. For instance, a sentence without meaning is nothing. In my previous lecture, I provided you people examples. For instance, Chomsky himself gave the example of colorless green ideas sleeping furiously. That has a perfect structure, but its meanings, there is trouble with its meanings. So it is not so you can see that in that case, the structure is fine, but the element of meaning is uh, not in connection with the structure. There should be a connection between the meaning of something and the word it is denoting. For instance, if we are saying that colorless green, it means that both are a kind of contrast. Green can be a colorless thing. So there should be element of structure plus meaning, and they both then contribute to a proper understanding. So here is a, a short sketch of optimal design of human language and things we have, and it is quite easy to understand it. So it should be quite easy to see and to explore its deeper levels, like deep and surface structure. We will see ahead how deep and surface structure was also rejected in the design of minimalist program. So let's see what's next. So we have here minimalist question, a very important thing. Now you have seen in this diagram the optimal design of human language. So now the question arises, what basically then language is, and why does it have the properties it has? Basically, these two questions are the basic concern of minimalist program. All of our discussion will be answering them. What language is, and what does it have, the properties it has, the properties it is having, what they have to do with it. So all of the discussion will be a kind of answer to these questions. There are no simple answer to these questions. What basically language is, that's not possible that we have a simple definition to this important topic. So language is, of course, a simple thing according to minimalist program, but it is sometimes not simple to approach it. So there should be a simple way to approach it as well if language is a simple thing. So these two are the very important questions in this philosophy. So first one is, what is language? So in this this debate, the basic question, the basic thing is that what language should be treated as, so that those approaches, those frameworks could be drawn that can be used to approach a language. And what are those properties that underlie it or are quite apparent, because those properties are going to play a very, very important role in the way a language can be approached or it can be described. So, for instance, while we were discussing Chomsky's quotation, he is in fact trying to raise these two questions, and that is, if we have a view of language, a philosophy of language, and a philosophy of its properties, so that is not sufficient. Maybe something is lacking because field is changing rapidly, and um, previous concepts and principles can be challenged. So there is a need to address these questions again and in a different way. So the second thing is the basic elements of universal grammar. Another thing is minimalist program also draws on universal grammar. So let me explain a little what basically universal grammar is, and then we'll see how what minimalist program has to say about universal grammar. You people will be dealing with universal grammar in your various courses, for instance, second language acquisition and psycholinguistics and several other fields. Universal grammar is basic to our understanding of how humans acquire languages and how languages they operate. So a lot of our understanding on what basically language is and what properties uh, it is having depends on universal grammar. So now we are going to see how much universal grammar basically can answer our questions. How much can we rely on it? So basically what universal grammar is, that it is a set of structural rules, and they're believed to be innate to humans, and they are independent of teaching. So universal grammar, it is basically principles that and parameters that underlie all the languages of the world, and humans are born with innate capacity to learn them, like they are already possessing them. They are like hardwired into their brains. So when we are born, we just start learning languages, and we are never taught the principles of our mother tongue, and we are never memorized lists of vocabulary items, but still we produce a lot. We produce plenty of words that we are never taught, and we master principles and rules that we are never taught. So this all accounts for universal grammar. It seems as if we are having a universal programming that is helping us with it. And for the answers of many of our questions, especially dealing with second language acquisition and with so many problems that people have with learning second languages, we rely on universal grammar. So now the question is, in minimalist program, how much we should rely on universal grammar to find the answers to our problems. Uh, so that's what Chomsky has to say to this question. Uh, Let me tell you the overview of these quotations. Basically, Chomsky is saying that universal grammar uses a top-down approach. In other way, we have the entire phenomena in front of us and then we narrow them down. Whereas minimalist program tries to narrow down things first and then reach a conclusion. Let me elaborate it again. For instance, first see what top-down approach it actually does. In a top-down approach, we have the entire phenomena on top. We're beginning from the top and then we minimize it whilst we move towards its bottom. Whereas bottom-up approach is concerned, we start from the bottom and what lies on the bottom? The structures, um, components, parts. So we start from the bottom and we narrow down things and then we come up with the bigger picture. So universal grammar is starting from the bigger picture and then narrowing it down, whereas minimalist program it tries to narrow down things and then approach the bigger picture. So throughout the modern history of generative grammar, the problem of determining the language fecality has been approached from top down. And as Chomsky say, how much must be attributed to universal grammar to account for language acquisition? Now he is saying that we have always approached to this problem from uh, uh, top down perspective in which we have things, we have a bigger picture and then we move towards um, the uh, the details. So how much we are going to attribute to our understanding of second language acquisition from the perspective of universal grammar. So the thing is, the minimalist program MP, it tries to reach the problem from a different perspective, from bottom to top. In minimalist program, we have, as I have introduced you people earlier, we have elements of XBAR syntax. We have the structures of morpheme and derivational and inflectional morphology. And in this way, we are actually breaking down things and then reaching to a bigger picture. So, how little can be attributed to UG while still accounting for the important principles? The thing is, the conclusion here is that the two approaches should converge and should interact to pursue their goal. So they are not mutually exclusive. Rather, they should complement each other. In the case of mutual exclusive things, we have just an approach or a way to approach a thing. Rather things should complement each other. Means they should move together. They should approach, or they should pursue their goal together. So the conclusion here is that, as I discussed earlier, that we very much rely on universal grammar in order to find answers to our many questions. But here Chomsky is saying that we shouldn't just rely on universal grammar. It is fine to rely on it, but we should also move towards a bottom-up approach in which we should start breaking down things and phenomena like you people will be doing in your syntax. If you haven't started breaking down structures and sentences, then you should start it. So we should be breaking them down and then reaching to some conclusion. So let's see what's that. So in a nutshell, UG should be the one filling the gap that will be remaining rather than doing all the effort. And it should only consist of those mechanisms that are specific to language faculty. Here it means in previous discussion we were saying, Chomsky was saying that we should have a top-down approach and then a bottom-up approach. So in this way, in which these both approaches, they are complementing each other, what should be done? Universal grammar should fill the gaps. Which gaps? Those gaps that will remain when we'll try to find answers to certain questions. What questions? Here are the questions. What is language? What are the properties? How we learn languages? How we acquire them? How we acquired our mother tongue? How we learn our second languages? How well we can learn our second languages? Learning languages, especially second language, is very important. How are we going to master it in a little time? All these questions. So universal grammar shouldn't be the only one to answer all these questions. Rather, we should break down things and structures, and they should be able to find answers to those questions. And when the gaps they are remaining, those gaps should be filled with universal grammar. So let me conclude my discussion so far in order to make things easy for you. So far, we have been discussing the philosophy, the important, you may say, characteristics or important tenets of this field. Sorry, this minimalist program. And I have introduced so far that this is basically an approach that builds on Chomsky's previous theories that of generative grammar, comment and binding theory, and then universal grammar. Building on all these theories, Chomsky is now finally in 1990s saying that they are not enough. We should seek further, we should seek more. And what should we be doing? We should be finding answers to our questions. Uh, Not just universal grammar should be doing that. Rather, we should adopt a bottom-up approach, and we should break down things so that they answer our curiosity, our questions, all the questions that I have mentioned earlier. And when certain gaps are remaining, those gaps should be filled by those previous approaches. So it is very, very simple thing. And then if you people are looking forward towards some concrete things that should be in front of you, that this is minimalism, then I have told you that you people would be studying X-bar syntax. X-bar syntax is in which you draw tree diagrams, and you people would be studying, you people would be doing morphosyntactic structure analysis kind of things, for instance, in which morphemes and inflections and derivations and all these things will be discussed. And if they haven't been discussed yet, they will be discussed in future, because this is what basically syntax is. So this all thing that you will be having right now, that is modern syntactic argumentation, this is basically a kind of minimalist program. We are really heading towards uh, bottom-up approach, in which we are analyzing things, and we are analyzing them in a very simple way. So I guess now things should be very clear. Understanding should be very clear. So let me discuss further, and you will understand even more. The things are very, very simple. Here it is. Minimalist program, it suggests that humans, again a very simple thing, that humans, they have optimal design and exquisite organization. So human languages and humans both, languages, they have those abilities that basically humans impart in them, and they have optimal design and well organized. So they have a very simple computational law. So basically the thing here is that languages, not only they have a very good organization, rather they have very simple computational laws. Computational laws means how we compute languages, how we break them down, how we structure them, how we discuss their structures. This is what computation is. And which seems to suggest that, let me read this, suggests that the inner workings conform to a very simple computational law or a particular mental organ. You may have seen that in psycholinguistics, you have seen in neurolinguistics, you have seen that we have progressed a lot, and we have now much better methods and technologies to see how human brain it functions, how we have all the capabilities that are required to produce and interpret languages. We are in a position to break them down like never before. So all these things are itself minimalism. Let me say that in fact, the entire field is heading towards minimalism. We are minimalizing things. Economy is there. Economy means less, less things. Uh, and Minimalist program works on the assumption that universal grammar constitutes a perfect design, in the sense that it contains only what is necessary to meet humans' conceptual and physical needs. This is a very, very interesting point. It says that even the universal grammar itself is a minimalist program because it contains only what is necessary. Minimal means minimal things that is just necessary. So it has a perfect design in the sense that it is just containing which is necessary, nothing is unnecessary. And you may have seen that's how we learn languages. We start from necessary, for instance, a single word stage while mother tongue is learned. So the beginning is single word stage, and then we move towards multiple word stages, and then sentences, and then further grammar, and then further exploration. So everything is a very, very humble beginning. So it seems as if not only humans, they have very simple computational mechanisms to operate languages, but also universal grammar itself is uh, based on a very simple design that is reflecting how only necessary human capabilities it highlights, and that's what humans basically need, and nothing more, or you may say unnecessary. So minimalism is the approach towards just necessary. So minimalist program is what is necessary and nothing else. So these are very interesting things. Let's see what's ahead. So next is a very interesting thing, the idea of economy. So in minimalist program, as the name suggests, it itself is uh, it focuses on the economy of things, of structures, that things should be minimal structures, and everything should be minimal. Things should be minimized to the necessary, and nothing should be unnecessary. So here is an idea of economy in minimalist program, and it has two types: economy of derivation and economy of representation. And let's have a look at them. So far as economy of derivation is concerned, derivation basically means deriving something. It means we try to derive some meaning. We try to move things or infer things from something. So it means, economy of derivation suggests that it is a principle stating that syntactic movements only occur in order to provide necessary uh, interpretations. So, in order to provide necessary interpretations, we have economy of derivation. For instance, here is an example. For instance, uh, here is the word. Here it is. The plural form s has been attached with the singular form, and so it conveys the meaning of plural words. For instance, when this inflection s is attached with it, then it refers to several animals and not just a single one. And this inflection is this simple inflection is driving a lot of meanings from it. For instance, we refer to multiple things, and in order to refer to multiple things, we have a simple principle that just add inflection s and you will have the meaning of multiple things. Can you people imagine a language that has such a system that a single form conveys more than one meaning? Can you imagine, for instance, English becomes a language that a single word, for instance, this word can suggest animals plus they are eating something. So the entire structure is minimized. So this is what we are referring to right now. Imagine if it would be the case that in English, in order to form plural structures, we had some dog plus dog is equal to many dogs structure, and in each and every sentence that's how we would be repeating things. Things would be very difficult and tough. Let me give you another example. For instance, there are some languages I uh, perhaps have mentioned to my students this example already, but others haven't listened to it, so let me mention it here. It relates to this economy of derivation. So there are some languages that are timeless. In those languages, time is communicated with gestures. So in a way, it makes things, it makes structures minimum, but it makes things complicated as well because then gestures are being used for a simple thing. So it can be taken in both ways. It minimizes the structures but also increase the effort. So we have in English, we can simply convey time with the help of here is the inflection bytes, es, or s or es or ed inflection, past tense inflection, and we convey continuation with ing in inflection. So we have such simple rules, simple things that can provide, that convey a lot of meanings. For instance, I wanted to go. Here simply ed. Ed inflection is it is performing the function of communicating the past tense. We don't have to use gestures for that purpose. So consider this a blessing if your language can provide you meanings within already existing structures. So one word is communicating a lot of meanings. For instance, here this is just one word, and it is referring to an animal plus a lot of animals. It carries two meanings. It carries an animal, and this inflection s means a lot of them. So here, this inflection, this present tense inflection is taking us to present tense. That time. Uh, for instance, when I said I wanted to go there, here wanted is conveying two meanings. Wanted, feeling that I have to go somewhere, and then there is an inflection of ed that is, and and the ed inflection is taking us to a past tense, past time. So simple inflections, they convey a lot of, they carry a lot of meaning. So this is the economy of derivation, that we derive a lot of meanings with simple inflections. So I think it's quite clear now. This example is how we derive plural meanings by adding s inflection, and this example, it highlights how we make how we use verb, and we convey the meaning of time. So we are blessed that our languages, they can convey time in a very, very simple way. So the next is economy of representation. Economy of representation means grammatical structures, they should represent only what is necessary. It means grammatical structures, they exist for a purpose, and our structures, they should only reflect that purpose, the necessary purpose. There is no need for more complex and such structures. For instance, deep and surface structure is an example. We don't need deep and surface structure if the structure that is in front of us is simply um, uh, it is fulfilling the purpose. There is one thing that I would like to mention, and it is very important. You may listen a criticism. Chomsky is sometimes criticized that he provided theories, then he negated them, and he came up with the minimalist program or something like that. The thing is, here he is not negating them. He's not saying that the earlier theories that he proposed, that of universal grammar and common and mining theory, and all of them, they are just not necessary anymore. He's just trying to instigate research, motivate research, stimulate research into more research. He's just trying to revolutionize the thought process. He's just trying to uh, lead us towards a search for more. Let me say, in other words, humanity would have never reached this point if we hadn't searched for more. It is just as we just imagine that we have everything and then we stop. So there should be no stop. That's what basically there is. So this philosophy isn't negating the previous philosophies, rather this philosophy is furnishing them further, and it is very, very important in each and every field, this sense that things must be improved. This sense is very, very important. Plus, it is a very, very sincere opinion on the part of a researcher. It is just like that. I record all this lecture, and then in the end, I would say I should re-record it because it can be improved further. I know it will take a lot of time and patience and all the pains I have to record it, re-record it, but this will improve the quality as well. This is what it is about. This is what it is that he is saying that structures should be simpler and derivations should be simpler. So let's see what's next. More developed versions of principles and parameter approach provide technical principles from which the minimalist program can be seen to follow. Here it is. If we develop further principles and parameters approach, if this approach, this principles and parameter approach, it develops further, then we can see that minimalist program will it will be in progress. So here again, it does not mean that we are negating the earlier philosophies, that of principles and parameters. Rather, we are saying that improvements should be done, and in this way, minimalist program can be seen as following what it should pursue, what it should achieve. So the next is implications. So before implications, I would like to give you people a quick review, and then we will discuss implications and our task. That's it. So let me give you a quick review what basically minimalist program is. So far we have discussed that minimalist program, its basic purpose is that to uh, uh, provide a new dimension to our future study of syntactic structures. So it says that all the theories that has been developed, for instance, all the theories means generative grammar, dominant binding theory, universal grammar, all these theories, they are fine, they are okay, but there should be further improvement in them. Minimalism should be there. Things should be simpler. Things should be uh, economical. There should be economy of representation and derivation, and it highlights how simple human language is and how simple its representation should be. It stimulates us to explore further, and universal grammar should complement the gap only, and it tries to find answers to these questions. What is language and what its properties are and how we learn it and how we can better at it, and it highlights how optimal design human languages have and Chomsky is urging towards improvement and and further development of previous concepts and principles, and that's all. So minimalist program is a kind of revolutionary approach that mm, highlights how much potential the field itself is having and how much improvements can further be made. So now we'll see its implications. In these implications, I can point out all the things, concrete things that minimalist program has done that you people will be studying in your syntax course as well. So first, first of all, let's see the first point. Well, it says that so the first thing that this approach contributed was the generalization of XBAR theory into bare phrase structure. You people will study XBAR theory. In XBAR syntax, we draw the tree diagrams, but those tree diagrams are way more advanced and they reflect a lot of syntactic relations and effects. So, what basically minimalist program did, its contributions, you may say, it was transformed into bare phrase structure. Bare phrase structure is a more simpler structure, although it reflects relations as well. But in these categories are simpler than XBAR syntax. And the next thing is representational levels were simplified. So it eliminated the distinction between the deep structure and surface structure, and and in our previous lecture we studied government and mining theory, and we saw how deep and and surface structures they try to elaborate the syntactic relations. So in this model, we prefer more simplified representational levels. They also reflect the deep and surface aspects of syntactic relations, but those relations they are reflected in a bottom-up approach way in which things are first uh, they are analyzed and then a generalization is made. So things they are being simplified here. So the next thing, the third implication is it eliminated the notion of government. So you people remember the previous lecture in which we discussed two elements, government and binding elements. So government elements were those elements that they governed and they governed and they uh, uh, were in kind of superior to other elements, and the binding elements they helped illustrate the meaning. So minimalist program eliminated the notion of government because it now in XBAR syntax the relation of government is um, highlighted in a much different way, in which it is a notion of how one structure is actually the reflection of other. One structure, how it is derived from other structure, but only the necessary ones. And the fourth one is that the inclusion of new points of interaction. So this interaction means the interaction between syntactic structures. So new points were added, like interaction with logical form. Logical form is like that we discussed in our previous lecture as well. The form that is in front of you, that is in written form. So new points of interactions were added in phonological form, in logical form. And fifth, last but not least, is that it removed the it syntactic derivations proceed by stages, and these stages are called phases. So in this phases, it is basically removed the complex structures, and it now processes with head and complement structure. In next bar syntax, we will study these things. So these are a few implications of minimalist program. So minimalist program is basically a wide approach that basically revolutionized or changed the way things are now approached and explained. In your syntactic study, you would be seeing how bottom up approach is being will be used to um, explore phenomena, and this is the landmark of minimalist program. So minimalist program is not just a theory that can be defined with a single definition. It is a entire a paradigm shift, I must say. It underlies all the modern syntactic programs and the criteria, and it is not limited to single element. So don't try to locate it in or find it any specific um, area where you can see, okay, this is minimalism. No, minimalism is much wider than that. Minimalism applies everywhere, in each and every phase, whether it's X-bar syntax, it is morphosyntactic argumentation, it is inflectional or derivational morphology, all the aspects of syntax, you will find it there. So while you study syntax, the rest of your course, try to see how minimalism will be applied there. So the next thing is your task. The task is very simple. I have 3 questions for you, and you people are going to answer them, think about them, and answer them. You have to listen to all of the lectures, so things are quite easy for you. These questions does not require uh, you don't try to just cram certain things to answer them, or try to find some ready-made answers. All these 3 questions are open-ended questions, and I am asking these questions to you, and I want you to answer them with your understanding. If you wish to refer to some materials that we have discussed, you can refer them, but do not try to find the answers from Google. Don't ask Google to answer your questions, because sometimes Google says that you people should contribute rather than asking. So all of the time, asking is not a good option. So try to be minimalist and try to provide me the necessary answer, and try to use the minimal resources. And in those minimal resources, Google or your friends, they do not include. So try to use minimal resources. Your lecture and your resource book will be sufficient. So the first question is, let me help you with them. First question is, how far do you agree with minimalist program linguistic theory? So your answer may be yes or no. If it is yes, then provide some arguments. If it is not, provide some arguments. All up to you. So the next is, do you think it has the potential to revolutionize? Okay, why I have added ed? Do you think it has the potential to revolutionize? Okay, I'm going to remove these 2. They are unnecessary. Not necessary. Do you think it has the potential to revolutionize linguistic thought towards linguistic mechanisms? So I have rectified it. So in this question, you're going to see what you believe. Okay, in this question, you're going to see, do you think it has a potential to revolutionize the linguistic thought towards linguistic mechanisms? You're going to see that what linguistic mechanisms are. Linguistic mechanisms are uh, language properties and all the questions I told you about what language is and how it operates, how can we learn all these mechanisms. So linguistic thought is our way of approaching to those questions. So do you think that minimalist program can change our ways to approaching those questions? Can this program can MP change our perspective towards those things? Can it change our views? Can it lead us to better and improved ways towards approaching those problems, linguistic problems that we discuss in that you people would be studying in syntax? So that's what it is. If you think yes, then provide some arguments. And if you think no, then provide your arguments in support of no. And the third one is minimalism the ultimate solution? This question is quite open-ended. It implies that ultimate solution means something that is going to solve our problems. What problems do we have? The problems we have is that, again, those questions. How we can learn new languages, how we learned our languages, how we learned, and how can we learn more. And all the linguistic problems, barriers to second language acquisition, how um, human brain it approaches towards language, what language structures are they really we are born with innate linguistic capacity, universal grammar. So do you think that minimalism can really provide us more answers to these questions? Some answers we already have. The previous approaches they have provided us answers to these questions, but we need more. Do you think that minimalism can provide us more, can help us further to solve our problems, to improve our communities, to help our students, to help our learners to learn more languages, to preserve our languages, to help us with our languages? That's how we serve communities. So you don't need to go in much detail. Try to provide a short answer of a paragraph or something. That would be sufficient. Just a paragraph. Don't. There's no need to write lengthy papers, pages on it. So that's your task. Here are the resource books. These are the resource books from where I have taken the data. And I guess this lecture and these slides are sufficient, but if you need more, you can download them from Google and you can consult them. And if you have any questions, do let me know. It would be my pleasure to answer them. I hope I have made things quite easy and clear for you, and I hope that you will be able to complete your task very creatively. And I hope that you really like this topic. I do a lot. It is a very, very interesting subject. and a prayer time, I must say. So I hope that things are quite clear, and if you have any questions, do let me know, and try to be very creative in your answers. That's all. Thank you very much. Allah Hafiz.